Hey there, good morning everyone. Meteorologist Ben Dorenbach here with a check on the tropics. We just got the 11 a.m. data from the National Hurricane Center, and there are still three tropical systems, named systems out in the Atlantic Ocean, still Jose and Maria, that have the biggest impact overall. Lee is just a tropical depression still. It is hanging on to that status, but ever so slightly it is expected to become a remnant low and really a whole lot of nothing. So that is good news. We can at least cross one of the storms off the list, but we still have Jose in the immediate concern for the northeastern United States, and then of course Maria, which actually strengthened into a Category 3 storm ago as it tracks right toward the Leeward Islands. Here on the local front, still quiet, and that's expected to be the case here moving forward the next few days. But let's get the latest update on. We'll start with Maria. It's a Category 3 hurricane. That's the brand new update. Sustained winds at 120 miles per hour as it is already impacting the Leeward Islands. Notice that's where hurricane warnings are in effect, and they will likely feel hurricane conditions, those 120 mile per hour winds within the next few hours. And notice that there are hurricane watches in effect for even the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. I actually checked that. That's a hurricane warning, as this is still expected to track toward Puerto Rico. And if we check out the latest track, that it is likely going to strengthen even further, possibly right when it makes landfall in those Lesser Antilles and Leeward Islands. So those islands will have dealt with both Jose and Irma and likely Maria here in the coming hours. So that's the most immediate concern for Maria, and that's going to continue on that west-northwesterly path, likely impacting Puerto Rico, and then continuing northwestward from there, possibly impacting to some degree the island of Hispaniola. So that's the Dominican Republic there on the right side, and then Haiti on the left. So a very similar track to what Irma started out as, but what becomes different is models are trending a little bit more in that northwesterly direction. If you recall, with Irma, it made that turn across the Florida Straits. If you recall, it made landfall in Cuba as a Category 5 hurricane and then took a while for it to finally move north, and then it finally moved into the southwestern side of Florida and the Florida Keys. So that's not looking like it's in the cards as of now, but just bear in mind that once you reach the end of this cone of uncertainty, one thing to remember is that the center of the storm, that's what's represented by the icon, that can move on either side of it, but also bear in mind that only 33% of storms actually fall inside that cone of uncertainty past day 5. So that path is still not completely out of the equation, but right now it's looking like it's trending a little bit more in this northeasterly directions, which might hint at it staying out to sea and not making direct landfall to the United States. So we'll certainly root for that solution, but we'll obviously keep you updated regardless. So still no need to panic in the United States nor Florida, but if you do know anyone in the Bahamas, or if you've got a cruise planned around there by, say, Friday, if not a little bit before then, but it's looking like the end of the week it's going to be impacting that island of Hispaniola, so the Dominican Republic, and then that southeastern side of the Bahama Islands by Friday. Likely as a Category 4 hurricane. Notice that it's expected to maintain that major strength pretty much through the end of this forecast, unless something major changes, which at this point it could obviously still do so. And if we take a closer look at the different models and what path they're painting for a possible track for Irma, notice that there's still quite a bit of variation. Notice that all of them do take it more up the Bahamas as opposed to moving it through the Florida Straits like Irma did. So that would certainly give some southwestern Floridians some at least sense of security at this point. Obviously, things can still change, but notice that some of the models do point it a little bit farther west toward perhaps the East Florida coast, Georgia, and maybe the Carolinas. It's still too far out to tell whether or not it would impact us directly, but some of them do hint at moving farther east, which would keep the center of the storm out to sea. So that's really what we're watching for in the coming days. If it were to make impact in the Carolinas, it would be in the time frame of Sunday through next Tuesday. So we're still talking 7 to 9 days away in the forecast. So that's the latest on Maria. We still have Jose. Notice that it is still out to sea. No major changes with it. It did weaken a touch. It was a pretty strong Category 1 hurricane last night. Right now, it's a very minimal Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. Minimum for a Category 1 hurricane is 74 miles per hour. Still on that steady northerly track, and notice that there are still some heavy rain bands that are impacting / expected to impact some of the eastern United States, pretty much everywhere north of the Outer Banks. And today is likely going to be the worst beach day if you are planning a trip trip out to the Outer Banks. And once it moves north here in the next few hours, it's going to be a thing of the past for the Carolinas. But notice that we are seeing tropical storm warnings for a lot of the mid-Atlantic states like Virginia Beach. Notice there's a tropical storm warning there, that little circle. That's what I just queried there for you. So that's likely due to 40-mile-per-hour wind possibilities with gusts up to 60 miles per hour and some locally heavy 1 to 3 inch rainfall, which might result in some coastal flooding, perhaps some beach erosion and some rip currents at the beach. So certainly not a direct landfall expected in the immediate term. The center of the storm might come close to Cape Cod, say by Wednesday, Thursday, but it would be likely weaker at that point. So it's just tropical storm watches and warnings all up and down the eastern seaboard from the Outer Banks all the way to the New England states, actually. Let's see what Boston and Cape Cod have. Let's take two. Let's try that again. And if we take a look at that, I'd be willing to bet that's either a tropical storm watch or warning out there for some of the mid-Atlantic states. But let's take a closer look at that here as we're not sure what's going on here. There we go. And let's click that. And this is as far north as you get. Yep, tropical storm warning. That's actually an upgrade from a little while ago. And that's likely due, again, those 40, 60 mile per hour winds. Actually very similar conditions to what we saw here in the upstate from Hurricane Irma. This storm is nowhere close to the size of Irma, but because they're going to be in the outer bands, that's why they've issued those tropical storm warnings out there. And that's the latest on Jose. So if you've got travel plans up to the northeastern United States, pretty much tomorrow through Thursday, you might have some flight delays and things of that nature. But other than that, that's not going to cause any local or really Carolina regional impacts besides some rough surf and rip currents at the Outer Banks beaches today. Then there's Tropical Depression Lee, as I said, really not much left of that. It's going to become a remnant low at some point the next couple of days and stay a fish storm. So that's obviously regarding that. So like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, that we'd likely be able to check one thing off the list, one of those named storms off the list, but Jose for the northeastern United States, and then Maria potentially late this weekend, early next week for the United States. And again, the jury is still out on whether or not she would make a direct landfall on the United States. Right now, the immediate concerns are for the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands along with Puerto Rico. It's a Category 3 hurricane, likely going to strengthen to a Category 4 as it continues to move into those Lesser Antilles as we speak, and then might likely make landfall out there within the next few hours, actually. So that's going to continue on that northwestern path to Puerto Rico, and then possibly Hispaniola and possibly the Bahamas by the end of the week. And after that, the jury is still out. So that's why we always tell you to stay up to date with the most recent forecasts. We'll have updates continually every few hours here throughout not only today, but the next few days as well. So with that, I will leave you. We'll see you on the 4 o'clock news as well as our brand new 5 o'clock news show and our normal 10 and 11 o'clock newscast tonight. So we'll see you then.